Alright, so in this video we're going to talk about why it took so long for me to leave my narcissistic parents' house. You see, I'm not a psychologist before we begin this video, but I started doing I've done many years of research, different types of personality disorders, different traits that my mother had, my father had, and I strongly believe that if my mom does not have malignant narcissism, which is very dangerous, it's pretty much sociopathy. It's one step down from sociopathy and psychopathy, but it's essentially various traits of psychopathy and sociopathy, which I also believe that my dad has as well. They both have it. My dad, had a very rough childhood. Did many things as a younger guy that would be considered him being on the sociopathy or the psychopathy spectrum, sociopathy spectrum. Excuse me, but yeah. I'm going to explain why it took so long to get out of my parents' house. So, I guess we can go back from the beginning, right? So, when I first started school, there's a bunch of things that happened, right? I was put in special ed classes for, pretty much my entire life, up from kindergarten all the way till the time I graduated high school. I was put in these special ed classes, and I was never allowed to move up. I was never allowed to advance. I was never allowed to do better for myself. I always had to be in these special ed classes. It's just my parents, what they told me is just like, you're not smart enough to go into mainstream classes. You're never going to be anything but basically a dummy. My parents told me I'd never be able to live on my own without government assistance. I'd never be able to do this. I'd never be able to do that. And I believed it. I mean, you're put in special ed classes with other actually, legitimately mentally handicapped people, and you start to believe it. I was put in classes with people that literally had Down syndrome, that were literally like flicking their wrists and clapping their hands and making noises, and who were nonverbal, autistic and Down syndrome, people with Down syndrome. Those are the classes I was put in. So you can imagine how that would affect somebody's mindset. You can imagine how that would mold and shape that person, right? I mean, it molded and shaped me into who I am today, that's for sure. So yeah, that was one of the big ones. It was that I was in special ed classes from the time I was from the time that I was in first grade. I had teacher aides breathing down my neck. Besides the teacher aides breathing down my neck, I was in actual, special ed classes. So, when I wasn't in the actual special ed classes, I was in a couple mainstream classes, but I had the teacher aides breathing down my neck 24/7 helping me. All right, so it wasn't just, I was in these mainstream classes and then I was doing everything alone. No, it's like I had these teachers aides breathing down my neck. I had, the regular teacher that was there asking me if I was okay and I needed help with anything, yada, 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 yada. And it was miserable. It was, the worst experience, one of the worst experiences I've ever fucking had in my life. Like, I wanted to kill myself almost daily. Okay, now I'm getting kind of dark into it, but but it's 100% true. I literally wanted to off myself, genuinely. And yeah, so I did not learn anything. Year after year after year after year, I would be learning the same things over and over and over and over again. I did not learn anything. I never advanced in my classes. I never moved up. It was always the same thing: basic math, basic science, basic English, basic history, like basic everything. And the history is not really needed. But I didn't learn anything. So years of not learning anything, right? And this was reinforced by the fact that I wasn't learning anything. My teachers, obviously, the fact that I was never really learning anything new. And a lot of the times I was forgetting the material that I already knew that I've been learning for years. But because I was forgetting the material, it looked like I needed to stay in those classes. So it kind of reinforced the school system and as well as the teachers that I was not ready to move up into any other mainstream classes. But that was because I was dealing with narcissistic abuse at home. And when you deal with narcissistic abuse at home, you're growing up, it's a concoction. It's a recipe for disaster. Because not only was I not really eating the most nutritious food, I was eating, my parents fed us dog shit. Like, just easy to make food, like for breakfast, donuts and fucking, a lot of potato chips, like, processed sandwiches and foods, a lot of box shit like Hamburger Helper and things like that. So it's not like I was not getting the most nutritious meals, whatsoever. I was getting a lot of fucking bottom of the barrel food, right? So on top of being just mentally and emotionally and psychologically especially abused every fucking day at home, right? That was changing my brain chemistry to a fundamental way. It literally changes your brains. You literally get brain damage from narcissistic abuse. So I was literally being abused. My brain was literally being damaged and abused by this constant onslaught of verbal abuse, psychological abuse, bickering, yelling, general chaos in the air. And I was not getting my nutritional needs met. And really nothing. I was not getting emotional needs met. Nothing was being met, right? Not even my educational needs, because my parents did not want to help me with my education. And with the times that my mom did help me, she would just find me. She would think it would pretty much just me being a burden. I was just a burden to my mom. Anytime I asked for help from my mom with my homework, it would just be like she would be watching reruns of some show she's seen 100 times before, or I was just not there. I was invisible. I was invisible to both of them. I would get the gray rock treatment. I would get the go ask your father, go ask your mother treatment. I would not get any help with my homework unless it was absolutely necessary, and if she was done with her show, of course, because her show was what mattered the most. I could not interrupt her show in her wine drinking, right? That's what mattered the most to her. So most of the time, when I didn't understand something and I got frustrated, she didn't know how to handle it. And since her tolerance for frustration was very low, she would get frustrated at me. She would raise her voice at me. She would yell at me. And then eventually she'd be like, just move over. I'll sit down. I'll do it. So she pretty much just did my homework because she didn't have the patience. She didn't have the tolerance. She didn't have the willpower to actually teach me how to do it. Right? So I never learned anything. I had my homework done for me most of the time. Okay? That really fucked me up because I didn't learn anything. So, of course, that showed the school system, that showed the teachers that I wasn't ready, right? On top of all that, I was being fucked with mentally. Mind games, emotional games, right? Gaslighting, I never said that, this or that. She would gaslight just to confuse the hell out of me. Saying things like, she was so good at gaslighting, manipulating my mother. Saying things like, I never said that, you said that, I didn't do this, you did that. That's not how it was. You don't remember correctly. She was so good at gaslighting, she made me almost check myself into a mental hospital. That's how you know you're a master manipulator right there, because I almost checked myself in, even though I already went twice. We'll get into that in another video, those fucking stories. Involuntarily, by the way, involuntarily. I wasn't cutting myself or anything or hurting myself, but we'll get into those 2 videos later on. So, let's see. So, that's, you know, another reason why, like, it just took so long. So it's just so fucked up from that, not learning anything. It just learned helplessness, right? Let's go, look, speaking of learned helplessness, like I talked about before, infantilization. Growing up, I was constantly infantilized. One of them being video games. You know, I was constantly, you know, I was pretty much just brainwashed. I used the video game, and I'm not going to say I didn't have a part in this, like, right? I should have, you know, if I would have known, I could have stopped earlier, but I was completely and hopelessly addicted to video games, because I was using the video games to essentially escape the abuse that was being dealt to me, right? I would go to my room, and I would escape into video games and escape into a different reality to escape the abuse that was being dealt to me, okay? So that's really how I got addicted to the video games, is because when you're narcissistic abuse, it's so brutal. It's the most brutal type of abuse. Psychological abuse, really, a lot of the times, is the most brutal type of abuse that you can go through, because it's just relentless, and it stays with you for years, decades, sometimes your entire life. A lot of the times it does. But that's, you know, that really, that's what, like, it was just really that. The big one was the infantilization. The more I fought against my parents to try to grow up and do things, learn how to drive, be responsible, apply for jobs. I did everything under the sun to try to be responsible. Try to get my parents to see that I'm trying. Try to get them to try. Because I always thought that maybe they're just fucking stupid, which they are stupid, but I just thought they were just fucking stupid in a different way. Like, they just didn't know how to parent at all. No, it turns out it's not only do they not know how to parent, but they're just abusive at the same time, and they just don't give a shit. Even if they did want to parent, they don't care. Turns out it was a combination of everything. So it's like, the more I tried to grow up, the more I tried to show them or make them, you know, proud of me, the more abuse that I got. So in order to avoid the constant onslaught of emotional and psychological abuse, I tried to make myself as small as possible. I tried to let them know that, like, hey, I don't want to fight. I don't want to argue. I'm going to go to my room. I'm going to fucking play my video games. I'm going to escape into Skyrim, or I'm going to escape into Call of Duty, or I'm going to escape into, some other game, Star Wars, because I don't fucking want to deal with this anymore. I don't want to argue. I don't want to have to deal with the constant psychological and verbal onslaught that you throw at me every single day. I don't want to deal with it anymore. I just want to be left in peace. If you're not going to be able to parent properly, if you're not going to teach me anything, if you're not going to show me any kind of positive reinforcement whatsoever, okay, well, I'm upstairs. I'm going upstairs. I'm going to play my video games because I don't want to be abused. And that's, I didn't know it before, but I know now. Because when you're in the mix of the chaos all the time, you don't have time to think. You can't think. There's no way to think. There's no way to turn it off. The only way I could even turn it off slightly was to just stay in my room and to just keep silent about it, keep quiet about it. But there was no turning off the voices and the echoes of how they treated me. You know, when I wasn't being physically present and physically having to deal with what they were doing to me. It still echoed in my mind. Even when I was playing video games, I couldn't escape it. It's just random things that they would say, random events that I remember. So anyway, growing up after that, it just seemed like the worse my depression and my dissociation, all these things that anxiety got, the more I escaped into video games, and the less will I had to actually take myself seriously and try to learn the homework, because I could not. I could not learn the homework because of the constant gaslighting and the onslaught of psychological abuse. Like, it changes your brain on a fundamental level. You have no idea the amount of brain damage. Like, someone who doesn't have narcissistic parents has no idea the amount of brain damage that it does. Like, it changes your brain on a physiological level. It's never, like, if you were to compare a brain of someone who's not abused to someone who is, it's night and day. It's night and day. It's not even it's not even a contest. Like, it does damage to you. It does long-term damage to you too. It affects your learning. It affects what's called the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for learning. It affects the amygdala, the fear response of your brain, because you're always in fight or flight mode, because you're always fearful what's going to happen next. You're fearful of your parents. And that grows. That grows and that grows and that grows. It's a muscle. The amygdala it's a muscle, or the brain's a muscle. The more of whatever part of your brain's being used, the more that's going to grow. And in this case, when the amygdala grows, and it grows and it grows and it grows, it overshadows the learning process of your brain. It overshadows the prefrontal cortex. So you're in your you imagine trying to think with your fear response, the fear response part of your brain, the amygdala, and you can't, because that's the fear response part of your brain. That's the part of your brain that is only supposed to be activated when you're in fight or flight mode, like when you're getting chased by a bear, or when you're getting chased by an animal, or when you're in danger, right? But because that's activated so frequently and so much, it has literally overtaken other parts of your brain, which is why you can't remember, which is why you literally cannot learn when you're being narcissistically abused. Your brain literally changes. But that's pretty much what happened to me. I just, like, besides even when the times that I did try, I felt that no matter what I did, I could not retain information. I could not retain information no matter what I did. And this in turn made my learning process even slower and even slower and even slower and slower. And I could not pay attention, and I could not learn anything, and I was always zoning out, and I was always spacing out, and that in turn made the teachers call my parents, and my parents, of course, acting like nothing was going on. They don't know why everything was happening, and it was just one thing after the next. It was an endless cycle. But you already know, besides that, I had to go with the insidious abuse of my things being taken from me and hidden from me. And that was a whole roller coaster in itself. If you can imagine just being in a clown house. For everybody that's had narcissistic parents but didn't have to deal with that specifically, imagine being in a clown house where the room is constantly changing. The mirrors, you're constantly looking at the mirrors, and the objects are distorted and the shapes are distorted, right? That's like what happened with me, is like my environment was constantly distorted and shifting and changing, right? Because I never knew what my environment was going to look like on any given day, because my things were constantly moving. My dresser would be moved, my table would be moved, my things would constantly be moving. So as the years went on and my parents continually denying this with a straight face, I was literally living in an alternate reality, even when I wasn't in the house, because I could never find my things. I never knew what was real, what was fake. I never knew when I was being gaslit, because I was constantly being gaslit by my own parents. But especially when I was at home, I was like in a different reality. I was not in reality. I was not living in reality, because my reality was constantly being shifted and changed by two psychopaths. So the amount of, on top of the other psychological and verbal abuse, the amount of damage that did to my brain was just exponential. And I'm still dealing with a bunch of things today. Even at work, people just I just completely zone out, and people ask me if I'm okay, blah, blah, blah. sick of it, but it is what it is. You have no idea. It's unbelievable the amount, like how much this has held me back from just achieving any kind of even monumental success in my life. It's just held me back so much, so greatly. And people who are not abused by narcissists, like who have never been through this level of narcissistic abuse, will never understand. They're never going to understand the helplessness and like the hopelessness and just the feeling of like wanting to be normal so bad, but you're never going to be normal because you grew up with these two psychopaths that just fucking turned what otherwise could have been a really good life upside down and fucked your whole world up. And now you're left to pick up the pieces because now they're on to enjoying their own life, right? Now my parents are on to enjoying their own life with their money that they have, right? After fucking up my life for no reason. So that, it's like all these things combined are, it's one of the main reasons. Like there's so many more things that I can get into. All right. So many more things, and it's another reason why, another big reason why I could never hold any jobs is because every time I try to hold a job, I would lose that job due to the ongoing abuse that was going home, right? The fact that my keys and my wallet were always missing because my parents would take my keys and wallet and hide them from me, so I couldn't get to work on time, right? So I'd always be looking for them. Another thing that they would do is they would physically block my car in with their cars, so I would not be able to physically leave for work. Like my mom would go with my dad to the store or something and block me in with their car, hide the keys or say it would be a number of things. They would physically block my car in, right? And make it so that they would not be able to move the car, or it would take a long time to move the car, or anything of the sort. They would physically, a big one that psychopaths do and narcissists do is they would sleep deprive me. Sleep deprivation was one of their best tactics, right? It was one of their favorite tactics to do. Sleep depriving me was one of their favorite tactics to do, whether it was banging pots and cans in the kitchen, or just stomping really loudly, or making a lot of noises, whatever it was, turning the TV volume up super, super duper high so I would not be able to sleep. And I mean really, really high. It was a combination of things. They're insufferable people. They were insufferable to live with. But it was a combination of things that made me not able to hold a job, because they were constantly making it so goddamn difficult to hold a job. So I would never be able to make any kind of money for any kind of significant amount of time, right? They were always doing something. I would have random car breakdowns. It was diabolical. I know it's an overused word on the internet, but it was really diabolical. I would have random car breakdowns. I would have my keys and my wallet would go missing. My parents would do things that would make me forget about work, or they would say when do you work tomorrow, this or that, so they'd be as loud as possible and sleep deprive me. There was anything that they could do in their power to make it so that I would not be able to have my own money and my own autonomy, they would do. All right. And this in turn, again, it made it really difficult. It made it really difficult to work. And the last job I had, I pretty much just had somewhat of a mental breakdown. I just couldn't work anymore, and I had to quit. And my mom, being the insidious cunt she is, I'm not even afraid of saying that. She's a cunt. You're a cunt if you're watching this. If you're watching this, I hope you're watching this channel. You're a fucking cunt. That felt good to see on camera. Anyway, Um, but yeah. So, my mom, being the insidious bitch she is, said, well, like, it's okay. We'll take care of you. Well, she was the one that convinced me to quit my job. And I was just mentally, I couldn't do it anymore because um, the abuse got so bad. She was abusing me. My dad was abusing me. Like, the abuse got so bad. I was just like, fuck it, I'm going to quit. My mom can just, well, it's okay. You can find a job next year after the new year. Just relax. That's how they get you. They try to make it seem like they're doing you a favor, and then they pull out the rug from underneath you. So that was the last year. It was 2019. I never got another job while I was working there, and so I never got one. So the year 2019, was when I really upped my ante with the narcissistic abuse research. 2017 was when I really started, researching more of the narcissistic abuse. And I started finding channels, a couple channels. But in 2019 was when it was after 2 years of constant watching narcissistic abuse channels, constantly informing myself of the narcissistic abuse and the damage that it does. I was making my game plan. So, essentially, I had to somehow find a way to get this car that I have now away from my parents, because I didn't have a car. So essentially, this car was in both of our names. That's the way she trapped me. Is I wanted to buy a used car, but she wanted me to have, it was a new car, and the new car was essentially it was a trap. This whole thing was a trap in order for me to not be able to take the car. So I co-signed a lease with her, that basically stated that we were both responsible for the car, right? We both had ownership of it. So I couldn't just take it and leave. I got so fed up in the year 2019, I said, just give me the fucking car, I'll make the car payments, and I'll leave. I didn't have that much, I didn't even have that much money left on it. I think it was like $5 or $6 grand. And I was trying to pay that off diligently until she just said, quit your job. She convinced me to quit. I quit my job like an idiot. And I pretty much, I don't even know what happened, but I pretty much just said, like, I just had it. I just threatened her. I was like, look, if you do not give me this car, and it sounds ridiculous, but I did. I didn't threaten her life. For everybody who's watching, there's not life. I said, like, I was just like, look, you're going to fucking let me go. You're going to let me live my life, and you're going to live out the rest of your life, but I'm not going to be in it. And if you don't, I promise you that you're not going to see me on your deathbed. You're not going to see me on your funeral, at your funeral. You're never going to see me again. And essentially, I pitted this leverage against her because she knows that she needs me way more than I need her, and I don't need her. The narcissist always needs the supply because the narcissist really can't survive without the supply. Without the supply, the narcissist shrivels. And I can tell you a story about that in another video. But without the supply, the narcissist is nobody because the narcissist needs the supply in order to feel alive. But I had somehow managed to, with that threat, convince her to give me the car. So she transferred over ownership to the car of me. And I just left. I left without any money. I had no money. I had nothing to my name. And I found these two nice people at work, who I told everything to. And I think, honestly, if they didn't help me, if they didn't save me, I would not be in the situation I'm in without them, without their help. They were the ones to bring me to a homeless shelter. They were the ones to drive an hour at least from where they lived, you know, 3 to 4 times a week for around a month to check in on me and see how I was doing, you know, in the homeless shelter. And, you know, just ask if I needed anything. Like, they would bring food, and I was just like, I think if it wasn't for these two people, I would not have survived. I would have not had the courage or the motivation to be able to make it out of that homeless shelter, because there was a lot of shit that I saw in that homeless shelter. It was easy. I got into somewhat of drugs. I got into alcohol. I got into weed. Thank God nothing else, but I could have been a lot worse. There was a lot of fucking fucked up people in that homeless shelter. One guy that was there lost his house, lost everything in a divorce, and would get drunk every day in the shelter and show up drunk. Others were just on cocaine, were on other types of mind-altering substances. I was only drinking and smoking, but I could have been a lot worse. But I managed to get a job while I was homeless, work my way out, save enough money to afford an apartment back then in the ghetto, but still an apartment, and have enough money to, you know, at least get appliances and things for that apartment. And I got out of that fucking shelter because they were about to, the extension was, I think it was like 4 or 5 months. It was only supposed to be a 3-month thing, but it got extended to almost 5 months. I got out of there to the 4th month. Got extended to 5 months because of COVID. So if it hadn't been, honestly, for those two people and just me, sheer willpower, I guess, on my part, I don't fucking know where I'd be. Probably dead. I probably would be dead, honestly. So this has been my really long story of how I escaped my narcissistic parents' house. So I hope you liked this video. Leave a like if you liked it. Put a comment down below. And for anybody that's trying to escape their narcissistic parents' house right now, I hope my story is a story of encouragement for you that can give you that final push you need to get out and make it out safely. So with that being said, I hope this video has helped you all, for the ones who are especially still suffering. And I'll talk to you in the next one. Take care.